Okay, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Roll Mangging for our Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition campaign. So this session was a little bit different, would be the key word, I guess. It was shorter. It was only about, really, a couple hours, something like that. And we were missing 3 out of our 5 players, including me. No, I'm just kidding. No, I was there, and Roella was there. So, I didn't really think this session was going to happen. I would have done it, but most DMs don't really like to do any major plot points without, the majority of the group there. But, no, Ren whipped up a session because, well, what the session was basically Orion traveling to the temple. Because that's kind of what I figured if we had a normal session, I would have just been, standing in front of the temple, just, staring at it, stroking my non-existent beard as I just ponder this place, and then they walk up behind me. That's how I figured, so that probably won't be how it happens, but I needed to get there first, and so this was kind of like a filler episode, you might say, of how did Orion get to the temple. So yeah, I played as Orion, and then Ro couldn't obviously play as Roella because she's on a boat somewhere else. So she just whipped up a new character for the sake of traveling, named Chris, who was a cleric bodyguard hired by my parents to accompany me. Which makes sense. I'm 15 years old. I'm trekking through this forest to go to a weird temple. Probably makes sense they would give me a bodyguard. It all works out. And then we had another player join us who would be playing in the campaign, but her schedule doesn't really allow it, but she had a free night, so she joined us for the filler episode, and she played I'm not sure what class. I don't know. A guy named Percy, who we also hired to help us guide through this forest. So, a 15-year-old kid being, joined by a couple of adults to go to a temple. It's a basic love story, really. And, so we were off. And so there wasn't really a whole lot of role-playing at the start, because it was kind of like a new group, really. And whenever you get thrown in with a new group, the role-playing is kind of rough at the start. It takes some time to boil, you might say. So, we just kind of were like, okay, and we skipped kind of the whole town stuff, and boom, we were at the woods. And so we started trekking through the woods. And we feel a lot of eyes on us, watching us. And it's like, oh, creepy forest, okay. There's elves in this forest. This forest was apparently gigantic. I didn't really get a good idea of how large it was, but it was like state-sized or something. That seems too large for how long it took us. But maybe not. Nah, it couldn't be that big. Maybe he was exaggerating. But it took us 4 or 5 days to walk through. I don't know. I didn't get a good sense of distance, but it doesn't take you 5 days to walk across Wisconsin. Yeah, I don't know. The point was, it was a big-ass forest. So we got, eyes on us, watching us from the shadows and shit like that, and then we hear, howling in front of us. And so we hear howling in front of us. First instinct, draw your weapon and run towards it. Orion wasn't about to do that, but these are his guides, these are his protectors, so he'll let them handle it. So we charge forward, we get to a clearing, and sure enough, there's 4 wolves there, and we try and just walk around them, but they aren't having it. They're protecting it, they're guarding it from our passage. They don't like us. And so this is apparently the only way to go through the forest, so there's no option. We're going to have to kill them. And they're just like, they're only wolves. And so I'm like, they're only wolves. Which, you know, they took it to mean, yeah, they're only wolves. We can take them. Where really it was just like, they're only wolves. But no, so they charged into battle, and Orion just kind of sat there and watched. Because that's going to be kind of the thing for quite a while. Is he's only really going to reveal his powers if necessary. So if his companions started to get like mauled by wolves, then yeah, he would have started just, you know, grasping these wolves and choking them to death and shit like that. It would have been slamming them into trees. It would have been awesome. But, you know, if they can handle it, then he's just a 15-year-old kid, you know? And I think that's the best way to do it. You know, Artemis went through varying states where he was either like a Sith Lord and he just wanted to rule everything to, you know, he was a god and he can rule everything, and he was generally pretty open about his powers. Orion I'm playing a bit more low-key, where it's better for them to think you're just a 15-year-old kid, and then, if need be, you prove them wrong. That's kind of how I'm going to play it. So anyways, they eventually took care of the wolves. They took care of 3 out of the 4. They were about to kill the 4th one when suddenly an arrow comes flying out of the woods. Yes, it's the classic protectorate elves that love the forest. My favorite. It's part of the reason why I never really play an elf. Schmendrick was a half-elf. I think half-elf is about as close as I ever get. I'm trying to think if I've ever played an elf. I doubt it. I really do. Even if it's like the optimal class, I would not pick an elf. They're just lame. They're the worst. I'd rather play like an ogre. That'd be so much cooler. That's a bad example. That's a lot cooler. I can't think of the next step up that's just like somewhat lame. Everything else is cooler. Everything else is cooler. Even a mull is cooler. Elves are just shit. If you like elves, that's fine. It's just my opinion. I don't know what has raised me to hate elves. They're just so... I want to say they're so French, but I like French stuff. So, I don't know what it is. I just don't like elves. But that's besides the point. Actually, it kind of is the point, but whatever. So the elves come out and they're like, what are you doing here? You killed our guardians. How dare you? You've blasphemed nature, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, Chris, she's just like, we just thought they were regular wolves. We're protecting ourselves, so on and so forth. And there was arguing. And then I stepped forward and I spoke in Elvish, because, you know, of course. And I'm like, we meant no disrespect, patrons of the forest. You know, we are merely attempting to pass through to the temple of Gales. And they decided that, you know, a wrong has been committed, and they will need to speak to their elder about this. If you agree to follow us, no harm will come to you, if you do not harm anything else. So I said, of course. Owen would have just, you know, said shove it or something like that. But Orion's just a good 15-year-old kid, man. He's a good guy, does his chores, takes care of his mom. He's just a good kid. And so, yeah, we followed peacefully. And we got taken to this, like, elven forest city. It was really badass. Like, I know, I just said elves are so lame and then I call their city badass. I know, it's kind of contradictory. But it was kind of like something straight out of a JRPG. But, or like the Wookiee villages that they have in the trees and shit. You know? I think it's Wookiees. They live in trees, right? it's a really cool concept where you just like build houses in trees and you got like the wooden, bridges, and it's cool. It looked cool. Trust me. There was a picture shown. And so we got taken to a hut, and the elder came and spoke to us. And I said that, we've committed a wrong and we'll do anything to for recompense. And I know, Boogle. Now's not the time. I'm telling about cool forest cities and lame elves. So he said that for penance, for doing this wrongdoing, if you're going to the Temple of Gales, you may take this letter to... I don't remember what he said. I don't know if he said one of our own, or if he's just said someone waiting there, or something like that. But we're supposed to deliver this letter to somebody at the Temple of Gales. And I said, certainly. And he said, I will prepare the letter, the message, and I will send the other member of your party to speak with you. And we're like, other member? So yes, the man who we found, who said he was looking for his group. I assume that to be you. I'm like, no. And I'm like, I would speak to this man. He's like, all right. So he wanders off. The guy comes in. He walks right up to me. And he's like, you're not a dwarf, are you? I'm like, no, not that I know of. And I'm like, my name is Orion. And he says, oh, Orion. And what are their names? Or are they paid not to say? And so I was like, how did you know that they're being paid? And so he used deductive reasoning. Or is that inductive? I don't know. But he's like, well, you're young if you're not a dwarf, and you're in the forest, and, either they are there to protect you or they're your mom and dad. I'm like, well, you are no, what did I say? I don't know, I said some shit. You're deductive or something like that. And he's like, this is Chris and this is Percy, but we didn't catch your name. And he says, well, I'm called Benny. Great. Benny sure gets around. And so we had a conversation with Benny where we found out he is also heading to the temple to meet up with his group there. And so I offered that we could travel together. Because he didn't seem like a bad guy. And... Orion's not really, at this point in his life, the type to believe in coincidence based on these visions. So, just happened, because the elder was like, we don't get many human visitors. And so it just happens that, this other guy here, at the same time, in the same village, going to the same temple, something's going on. And he would rather keep this guy close by than have him wander on his own. So, Benny agreed. We got the letter from the elder, and we all went on our way. I'm sure, I don't know. Well, that village, that city, whatever, probably would be a really cool place to check out and just kind of, shop around and do shit in. But I knew this was a short session, and Ren put it together on the fly. So I'll log it in my memory as a point of interest. But now was not the time to mess around. So we went on our way. And, both the elder and Benny basically asked me why I was going to the temple. Which is a good question. This 15-year-old kid is heading through this gigantic, weird forest. He's got a couple of hired companions going to the Temple of Gales. What is he doing? So I basically gave the same answer to both. I said, I'm looking for answers to a question that is not yet formulated in my mind. It sounded intellectual enough. And neither of them were really satisfied with that answer. But then, in return, I asked Benny, I was like, Sir Benny, have you ever felt that perhaps you're meant for something more? And he's like, well, I kind of strive to be a bit less, actually. A bit more tends to lead to trouble. I'm like, perhaps you're right. And so we're walking through the forest, and perception checks are rolled. And we realize, well, one of us realizes, that perhaps we're going in circles. We passed by the same tree or something like that, same landmark like 3 times. And so we all stop. And, of course, Chris quickly blames Percy, who's our guide, for getting us lost. And so I'm like, blame will get us nowhere. Let's think this through. Very, very Orion thing to say. Very Artemis thing to say. And, so they're kind of debating about how to get through this, and I'm just sitting. I sat there in silence, and I was in thinking mode, and I really love to be in thinking mode because it usually ends well. And so they're like, oh, we should mark a tree, but no, the elves won't like that. We could leave something and see if we cross the same tree, and mark a rock or something like that. And I'm still sitting there thinking while they go by this. I'm like, or we could make a makeshift compass. And so, this is one of those times where it's like, again, I don't want to be, this is like a humble brag here, I know. But I'll read a bunch of stuff. The internet is a wealth of information, and I'll read just all sorts of random stuff. Biology, chemistry, physics, geology. Yeah, I'll just read all sorts of random stuff. Some of it's potentially useful, a lot of it's just pointless. And when I'm reading, after I read it, none of it really sticks. The next day I'd be like, I don't know, what did I read about? What was that? Until it comes into use. Until it's like, boom, there it is. Then it's like, oh yeah, I read about that. Here's a good example. It's like, you're lost in the woods. How do you make a compass? And boom, there it was. So what you do is you take a needle or a needle-like object, a thin piece of metal, and then you magnetize it by either rubbing it on a magnet, or you're unlikely to have a magnet. In this case, we rubbed it on silk, because Orion's a noble. He dresses very well. He's going to have some silk on him. We could have also used fur, or if really needed be, we could have used Chris's steel shield. So we took this needle that I had, and we rubbed it on my silk, and we found a leaf. We plucked that, and we took one of Benny's mugs. He's got a whole array of mugs, filled it with water, floated the leaf on top, and there you go, points north. And so it was just kind of like, well, we walked for a little bit, and then the compass went crazy, and we realized that it didn't help at all. But at the time, it was like, science, bitch. It was like, it didn't do anything. It didn't do anything that really we wouldn't have solved any other way, but it was like, I like to really play a character as unique, and, playing Ovum is completely different than playing Orion or Artemis or something. And so I like to think, even for storytelling purposes, for these videos or in the future, it's like, how did Orion try and solve that situation versus how did Ovum solve that situation. You know, you're never going to have the same situation, but you get what I'm saying, where it's just, they're both completely unique. And so, yeah, we could have just like, all right, let's mark a rock or something, but that's not quite as memorable, is it? It's not quite as unique as, well, he made his own compass from shit that he had on him or around him, and it didn't do shit, but it was cool. So yeah. And really, that's why I love RPGs. Because what other medium would that really come into play? Like, that right there is why I love it. You play a board game. Never, ever, when you play a board game, would knowledge of how to make a makeshift compass come into play. Only RPGs or a survival situation is that really going to help. Maybe some sort of trivia game. I don't know. Probably not. But it was just like, that's why I love RPGs right there. That sums it up, I think. So, yeah. Will I ever use that knowledge again? Maybe not. But I used it there. Boom. So that made it all worth it, I guess. Anyways, so yeah, we used the compass for a little bit, and then it just started spinning around and went crazy, and I'm like, something is affecting the laws of science here. Yes, it could have been an external magnet fucking with it, but I guess I was a little metagaming because I didn't think Ren would do that. He would have blown my mind if he did, if we discovered there was some big magnet underneath our feet or something. That would have been like, whoa! But, no, it was magic. And so I'm like, unfortunately, we live in a world where magic exists. And so the laws of science are not always set in stone. Actually, they're never really set in stone. Anyways. So at this point, I'm like, okay. I kind of already figured magic was at play, but I wanted to be sciencey first. And so I was like, okay, magic. And so I went into think mode again as they started, doing their back and forths. And so I finally said, I asked Chris, I was like, that missive does have a letter inside of it, correct? And she's like, yeah. But then she took it out and she actually examined it. And finally we convinced her to open it up. It was sealed. So she opened it up and it was in common. And I already knew, I was like, that's bad. Because why would, yeah, I assumed this letter was for an elf. Because secretive elves living in the forest generally only communicate by letter to other elves. So if it was an elf to an elf, it would be an elvish. It was not. So I was like, that's probably a bad sign. Well, what does it say? It wasn't addressed to anybody, and it said, if you find this letter on the bodies of some travelers, take this as a warning, and do not commit wrongdoings against the forest, or something like that. And so she crumpled it up and threw it away, and I'm like, yeah, this is why I hate elves. I myself am also responsible for continuing the stupid, lame, foresty elf trope. If you remember the On the Backs of Gods campaign, right near the start on Gaia, when you had the industrious humans and the tree-hugging elves warring each other. And, yeah, those were about... I was like, I'm just going to make these elves as lame as freaking possible. Anyways, so yeah, the elves screwed us. Like, damn elves. Yeah, maybe if I was in top form, I really would have suspected something, but there was no... Even if I knew after we had killed the wolves that the elves were going to, mess with us, there was nothing I could do. we had to go with the elves, and we pretty much had to accept taking the letter and go on our way. There was no other course of action. Not that I can think of. Not that would result in... No, because, no, we were screwed no matter what. We were screwed no matter what. So, okay, we were basically trapped in this kind of illusion or something within the forest. I'm not sure if it's part of the forest itself or if it's because of the elves. I'm not sure what the source of this illusion is, but it basically prevents anybody from leaving. Unless you have some sort of... I called it a magical catalyst. I don't know what you would really call it. But the elves, one of us noticed when they went into the city, they had kind of like a powder or something like that. Some substance that they put near their face. And that they were allowed to enter the city. But we didn't do that. It was just one of them. So I guess that temporarily broke the illusion. I don't know. Point was, you needed the catalyst. And I was like... I think I got to roll an Arcana roll to figure out if I could make the catalyst with what's on hand, and I didn't roll high enough. So... I was like, you know, we have no knowledge of what ingredients it would be. And so there was some more arguing. I was in think mode again. And then, okay, so then I finally said, the way that I see it, we have 3 options. One is we wander around the forest looking for potential ingredients and try to cobble together every combination until we figure out the catalyst, which will most likely lead to our starvation and death. Option 2, we continue to trek potentially north and hope to break through the illusion by walking, most likely leading to starvation and death. Option 3, we attempt to cause as much mayhem as possible in this forest until the elves are forced to come out and deal with us. Yeah, obviously, that's not all possible options, but I mean, that's all I could think of with what I had on hand. Because, yeah, I still can't really think of another one, because you either have to deal with the elves and their illusion in some way, or you die. If I can't figure out the ingredients for this catalyst, there's no way that we can just break through the illusion. You can't just charge through it. That's not... The ovum way does not work. So that was the 3 options as far as I saw it. The problem with... the first 2 options is probable death. The problem with the third option is, what do you do when you do encounter the elves again? Because they're going to be pretty upset. Now... Yeah, as Orion, I could probably handle 1. Maybe 2 if I slammed them together. As far as a fight goes, I don't know how many they would send, and then you would have to hope that they have the catalyst on. They probably would, because they would have to return. So, that would be the one option. You could fight them. I could try and communicate with them, make a deal, but these are tree-loving elves. They're not about to betray anything. They want us dead already, and we just fucked up their forest even more. So, yeah, that's probably not good. Maybe I could use some telepathy bullshit on them. It's possible. As another option, we could have tried to get back to the city and communicated with them without messing up their forest more, but we'd have to come up with a believable reason for coming back. I guess we could say, well, we couldn't leave, but we already know that they're trying to kill us. They want us dead. So we'd have to keep kind of our poker faces on. And if they ask to see the letter or something like that, then the gig is blown and we're in the middle of the city and we're going to die. There's so many... Yeah, that's kind of what goes through my head. There's a lot of problems I didn't really like any of our options because I can't think through all of them. There's too many variables. Option 3, as the situation was, option 3 was really our only way that I saw it, and I would just kind of wing it. And yeah, when I play intelligent characters, I don't like to wing it, but it's Dungeons and Dragons. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. Pretty much everything is mostly winging it. Nothing ever goes to plan, as I often say. So that's all I saw. But then, of course, Benny whips out the orb. And so we have a bit of a discussion about this. And he says, it could maybe probably get us out of this illusion, but something bad might happen. The orb and the bag and all that is kind of the bane of my intelligent character's existence. Because it goes against everything they stand for. It is the opposite of logic. It is the opposite of a plan. It is chaos. But, so I was like, I don't really agree with this. As a man of logic, I'd prefer not to risk my life on chance. Not when there's something that I can maybe plan through, Not really, but plan a bit more. This is just pure chaos. But I was like, I'm not a king, so I'm not going to dictate what happens. We can put it to a vote. And so it went 3-1 against me, which I knew it would. It's fine. I need to just stay in character. I knew this is what would happen, because there's really no other way out. And so, yeah, we decided to use the orb. Benny walks up to Orion, puts his hand on his shoulder, and says, "Have you ever been with a woman?" Which is really strange. Not quite as strange as it could have been. Because he could have been like, "Have you ever seen a grown man naked?" Which would have been very awkward, and I might have mind-thrusted him or something, which is also kind of a little homoerotic. But I'm like, I don't see how that's relevant. He's like, I wouldn't like to see a man die a virgin. I'm like, that's the least of my concerns. And so he messed with the orb, he started activating it, and in a glimpse, I saw the symbol that I'm searching for. Well, because as I said, I'm having visions. I've been having these visions, which is why I'm on this journey. And in my visions, which are more kind of like flashes, like it's like a strange music video going on in my head when these happen. So I can't capture much. And all I've captured is that symbol, the symbol of Artemis or whatever. The snake eating its own tail. The Ouroboros, if you want to get real world with it. That symbol and the name Garuda. So putting those two together, you can see why I'm heading to this temple. So I saw that symbol on the orb in a quick blur as it moved by. And then, yeah, the orb happened. It activated. And he made me roll for it because apparently it was centered on me. So whatever bad thing was about to happen is on me, which is the worst. God. Artemis at least could alleviate some of the problems with it a little bit. I had some comfort. Here it's just like, I don't want this character to die. That would have sucked. I didn't die. You can take comfort. Basically, a bird came out of my mouth like a cuckoo clock and chirped like 12 times. And then it went away. And I had like a feather left in my mouth. And yeah, that was really weird. I didn't care for it. I wouldn't do it again. I would have abstained from that. But we broke the illusion. Yeah, we used the compass and we just headed north and it was all good. So that was nice. It did work. It didn't kill us. That's as good as we can hope for. And so while we're walking, I asked Benny about the orb. There's a symbol on that orb that is the same of which I seek. And I tell him which symbol. And he's like, I think this place that you're traveling to, you'll find your answers. Which was very cryptic from Benny. It's like, very well. And I asked him where he got the orb, and he said he's just holding on to it as a favor or something like that. Safekeeping for a friend. And he would very much like to return it to him. So Benny is also very cryptic. And, yeah, so we got out of the forest, and we're about to hit the temple, and that's where we ended. We can pick up next time with the whole group, hopefully. And, yeah, so that was the first little bit of Orion. I didn't get to do any Scion stuff, which is okay, because that's just kind of... The Scion-y stuff is all kind of just perks. Playing as the genius is really what I enjoy doing. And I got to do some smart stuff, so that was cool. I like that. I mean, yeah, playing as Ovum and smashing everything that's heretical is always good. But it's fun going to the different side. The flip side. It is a little strange going from somebody like Schmendrick and going to Orion. Because my whole mindset has to just, like, flip, you know? It's like... You know, last week it's like, how do I die? How do I create chaos? Stab this guy. Oh, burn everything. And now it's like, I have no intention of hurting these elves. I hate them with every fiber of my being, but yeah, we'll go peacefully, of course. I mean, yeah, potentially my plan was to just piss them off by fucking up their forest, but that's out of necessity, man. Yeah, so it's a unique experience. I enjoy both, but this is more. This has more longevity, as you can probably tell. So yeah, that was the whole session. It wasn't that crazy. I got 200 XP out of it, which is nice. Which I think actually puts me ahead of everybody else. I think, because I think last time we were all brought up to level 3. And now I just got 200 more XP. So I don't know. I'm not... When I play characters like this that are long-term, I don't really care about XP too much. Ovum, it's like, yes, I need to kill everything. Give me XP. I want to be so powerful. Here it's just like, you know, I'm in for more of the role-playing and all that kind of stuff. So, whatever. It's good, because I get more powers, and I get to fuck shit up. Yeah, so that's about it. Next time, hopefully, it should be more exciting. The whole group going into the temple. Maybe get to do some Scion-y stuff. You know. Pick up a boulder. No, I couldn't do that yet. I think the max weight that I can lift at this point is like 230 pounds. If I put everything into it. No, maybe I could lift a little bit more if I really pushed it. But that's not a whole lot. Not a whole lot at this point. Yeah, so cool stuff. So next time, Roella will go back to playing Roella, and then her character this time will just be like an NPC, and then the Percy character will either be an NPC or if the other girl returns for another session. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with that. But, yeah, I think that about wraps it up. I know it wasn't the most crazy session. There was no explosions or anything like that. But, hey, I made a compass. Alright. My name is Mang. This has been Roll Mangging, and I'll see you fine folks next week.